Well, following its very near collapse 2 years before, African Bank managed to turn itself around. And by April 2016, looked like it was coming back. And it has now made significant strides. In a relatively short space of time, from the brink of insolvency, it's now got a functioning business. Admitted attorney turned financial services executive Basani Maluleke is now officially Reserve Bank sanctioned as the new chief executive of African Bank, taking over from Brian Riley as the CEO. I'm Bruce Whitfield. This is Taking Stock, and we're taking stock with Basani Maluleke today. You've worked across the financial services industry. You've worked at the top end of financial services, private clients at FNB and RMB. You've worked as an attorney, and now you've turned into a money lender. Are your parents proud?
They absolutely are. You can imagine this has been something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. You don't just become a CEO of a bank overnight. And it's something that I've definitely been planning. And it's really been encouraging to have the support of the board in making this happen, and the support of the management team at African Bank. It's an extraordinary thing to be able to do. And I think perhaps all the noise about, first black CEO and all of those good things detracts from the fact that
does that bug you? Does the moniker bug you? You're the first black woman chief executive of a South African bank. It's a big milestone, but it surely isn't all of that you're about.
No.
I mean, one wonders whether it detracts or adds to the story.
So I was saying to Brian Riley, when this whole black female CEO story broke, we're driving in the car together, and I became very annoyed, immediately very annoyed. But I think, the key is to recognize that it's important for South Africans. It's important for other black women who have the same aspirations, for them to believe that it is possible. It's important to have role models, and I mean, if that's what I need to become to people to ensure that we get the level of transformation that we need in the country, then that's what must happen. So I think in a lot of ways I don't enjoy it, but I do think it's important. I think it's a good milestone for the country.
A lot of people also don't appreciate how hard it is not only to become a director of a bank, but particularly to become a chief executive of a bank. The regulator, the registrar of banks, sits in Pretoria in that big, tall, very ominous building at the Reserve Bank, and has to assess the quality of every single executive who's ever appointed to the board of a bank, and non-executive, but particularly when it comes to chief executives. True. You've had to go through the mill on this, I'm sure.
I definitely have. And, one of the things I will say about the Reserve Bank is that they are very thorough, and they take their time, and I've been very surprised at just how thorough they are. But I think what's been very gratifying as well is spending time with the deputy governors and realizing that they take a much broader view of what makes a good chief executive, right? Because it isn't just about, do you understand credit loss ratios, and do you understand what the funding of a bank actually requires, and do you understand what the regulatory framework looks like? It's absolutely about what should banking look like to be more inclusive? How does the banking system fit into a country that is as complex as ours, right? We have very, very complex problems, and I think we've always spoken about the need for banks to be more inclusive, both in terms of how we recruit people into the bank, who we train and who runs banks, but also in terms of who our customers are, how we treat our customers. And I've really been encouraged by the fact that they take all of that into consideration in deciding whether or not somebody is suitable.
What is the state of African Bank? It was African Bank Investments Limited, listed on the JSE. There was a big insurance business. There was a big lending business. Yeah. African Bank would get its money that it lent to its customers through the wholesale market. In other words, go to markets and borrow money from pension funds and others, and then lend it on to its customers at inflated rates, and hopefully then do good collections. And for a long time, that model worked, and then ran out of steam. What is the African Bank business that you run today look like?
So you'll recall when the bank was put under curatorship, there was a lot of work done into looking at how do you rescue the bank by taking the good assets, so the good loans, let's call them that have a high rate of being collectible, of being collected on, and putting them into a separate business. So that business was then ring fenced. That is now what we call African Bank Limited, or African Bank Holdings, and that's the business of which I am CEO. And of course, then the rest of the book was left in the old ABLE, in the old African Bank Investments Limited, which is a listed company. That company has now changed its name to African Phoenix, and it remains listed. Whereas we are not listed, we are a private company, and the strategy of the bank, which I think is really starting to take hold now, is to become a successful retail bank. So we want to start offering all a different suite of products. You will recall that African Bank was mostly just a monoline product institution.
You went in and you got yourself a microloan, and later on you got yourself a credit card.
Right.
It was simply lending, very simply, at very high interest rates in the traditional micro-lending way.
Right.
Does that business sit comfortably with you as a South African in a heavily indebted society?
I get that question a lot, as you can imagine. And I think we need to understand as a society that there's definitely a place for personal loans. Right? There definitely are times in people's lives when they do require personal loans. And when I sit and I talk to some of our customers and they talk about how grateful they were that African Bank was able to come to the party to help them to fund their education, or to help them to bury a parent, or to help them to pay for furniture in their homes, right? To kind of live a better life. That stuff is really important. So there's definitely a need for it. In terms of what rates you charge and do you exploit people, I think that's definitely something that we think about a lot. And getting into an environment where we're charging more risk-based pricing, meaning that we're not charging people at the upper level or upper threshold of what is legally allowable, is where we need to go to kind of say, how do we make sure that we treat customers more fairly? How do we make sure that customers get value for the loans that they take out of us?
So we've seen your big rival, Capitec, come under a huge amount of public scrutiny as a result of Viceroy, the short sellers, which have said that the business model is not a fair business model. It doesn't treat customers fairly. That's something you've got to think about quite actively, I would think, as chief executive of an African bank. You don't have the same level of scrutiny, perhaps, but what sort of insurance rates can you charge? What sort of lending rates can you charge? How do you treat your customers more fairly as a microlender?
So a lot of the work that was done in reconstituting the new African Bank was around ensuring that our risk appetite is correct, ensuring that we price within the correct regulatory framework. So you'll recall that there were the interest rate caps that came in a few years ago, and then that was followed up with the insurance regs. So we definitely are well within the regulatory environment, and also I think our board plays an active role in ensuring that we price and we write loans within our credit appetite. So a lot has been done around just ensuring that we are treating our customers fairly from that perspective. But over and above that, Bruce, before you move on, is our purpose, our bank purpose is humanity through banking. And a lot of what we do ties back into that, is to say, if we're saying that for the most part, people feel that banks treat them like numbers, or banks don't really care about the people, they're kind of just product push as opposed to trying to understand what is in the best needs of their customers. We're trying to transcend that and say, what would a bank that actually thinks about the needs of its customers and delivers on those needs, what would that bank look like? And we do a lot of introspection around how we treat our customers and the products that we deliver to them, to make sure that we deliver on our humanity through banking promise.
Basani Maluleke is the chief executive of African Bank, just this week confirmed by the Reserve Bank as the new chief executive of this business. More taking stock with her in just a moment here on ENCA.